barely lost to Biden. So as I'm recording this, it's neck and neck. It hasn't been decided yet who's going to be our next president. It's about 2 or 3 o'clock, actually 1:33 on the day after the election, 1:33 p.m. Last night it looked like it was going towards Trump early for a while when he took Florida. Looked like he would take North Carolina and Georgia. Those later two are still contested as we speak. Um, and he took a bunch of other places, I believe, if I remember correctly. And then this morning, it looked like it was more trending towards Biden. Both of them have about 220 electoral votes. I think Biden has like 10 or 15 more than Trump does. Depends which network. One network I saw actually had Trump ahead this morning. But that seemed to be an aberration. But there's a major reason why Biden looks like he's going to prevail by just a little bit. And obviously the polling was wrong again, so that's a major consideration. But why is Biden going to win? And if it turns out Trump wins, then I'm wrong, but it looks like Biden's going to win. And I want to give 3 or 4 examples of Trump overreach. So in the Mueller investigation, Trump wasn't grateful or, that he came out of that unscathed. I mean, he could have easily got pegged. Mueller, a lot of people felt, not only didn't present the case as well as it could have been presented, and publicly didn't present well, but he was very considerate of Trump. Like, he basically said in his report that, we can't consider this question, we can't consider that question about Trump. And a lot of people felt that he could have really nailed Trump a lot more than he did, quite a bit more. So Trump, rather than just being grateful that he was not, worse off in the Mueller report, he came off really bad in it anyway. Very shortly thereafter, just a number of days, he did the matter with Ukraine that led to his impeachment. And, he was really, really lucky that the Republicans backed him because, the evidence was pretty overwhelming. A lot of people felt it was worse than Watergate. But not, so that was the second example of overreach. The first was the Mueller investigation, how he responded to that and everything that it contained. The second was the impeachment. And then rather than being grateful that he got off with impeachment by the skin of his teeth, he mocked the whole process, and he didn't learn from it like he didn't learn from the Russia investigation. Like he didn't relearn from the Stormy Daniels and didn't relearn from the bankruptcies. He doesn't learn from his problems. So the next overreach he had was the pandemic. He had a great economy before the pandemic. He would have won basically, maybe not in a landslide, but a landslide in modern terms. He probably would have won by like 10, 12 points. But the pandemic happened, and people blamed him for the pandemic because of all the crazy stuff he did, like how he denied it, and his statements about Clorox and everything else he did crazy. Some people feel crazy. It's not my word. Relative to the pandemic, and the United States has many more deaths compared to the rest of the world, percentages, most of the world. And, just a day or two before the election, he said he's going to fire Fauci after the election, most likely. So, it's just overreach and arrogance. He didn't learn from the Mueller. He didn't learn from Stormy Daniels. He didn't learn from the bankruptcies. He didn't learn from Michael Cohen. He didn't learn from, apparently cheating on his wife. He didn't learn from, the Mueller investigation. He didn't learn from the impeachment. He's still just as arrogant. He didn't learn from a lot of other things that I could probably name. So he didn't learn from the pandemic. So he, is in a tight election. And then he still didn't even learn. Like last night, he did a crazy thing where he said all the voting should be stopped. Well, the voting is already stopped, but I think he meant the counting. And even the Republicans said that's way overreach. So even yesterday, and he's still saying the same things about the election being stolen. See, what happens is people that are lazy, and I'm not saying Trump's lazy because he's a hard worker, but I think he's intellectually lazy. Like he doesn't like, big briefings. He doesn't like disagreement. People that are tyrants or bullies or authoritarians or whatever you want to call them, they're intellectually lazy because they don't want to actually engage with other people and have compromise and dialogue. Trump could have started his presidency by saying, that he was going to unify people and really do it, but he's been like partisan and like attacking and trying to just overrun and overrule people since the beginning. And last night was a further overreach. Like if he had just said last night, it's an unfair process, and I don't like how it's going, he would have been much better off because a lot of the country would have said, well, maybe, maybe he's calmed down, and maybe, I mean, the country is split 50-50. That's very apparent. It's like it's been for like decades since Gore and probably before, split 50-50. So, but he had to basically say, overreach again and say things that even the Republicans don't support. So, Biden's probably going to win this election by a small amount, and it's because of all these examples of Trump's overreach.